It'll affect about 60% of games. And, Michael, basically a chance for a team or a batter, a catcher, or a pitcher to say, if I don't agree with the ball strike call, I can challenge it.
Well, not every single spring training is set up with the cameras, but Steinbrenner Field is. So I'm looking forward to our game that we're doing on Friday at 1 p.m. because that's going to be the first game that we see it. Only the pitcher or the catcher or the batter can actually ask for a review. It supposedly takes 17 seconds to get the review, and you get 2 of them. And if you're right, you continue to hold 1, but you only get 2 for the game.
Yeah, I like that it's 17 seconds. I like that they're trying to get the calls right. I do know, and we've seen this in challenge systems, how often do you see a player slide into second base and immediately dug out, you got to challenge that, and they end up being wrong. So I do think that we'll see which players are right about what was a ball and what was a strike. I interviewed Commissioner Rob Manfred on my podcast, Yankees News and Views, about this topic, and he said this is something that he could see in baseball in the future. It's not going to happen in 2025. We'll see if it ends up being added in 26 or 27, depending on how things go in the spring.
What I find interesting about what you said is a player slides into second base and they're waving for the replay. It's ultimately the manager's decision to challenge or not. This is completely up to the players.
That's why I like this, because it adds some theatrics to it. I'd say 80% of the time the players are wrong. When they say they're safe or they're out and they point to the dugout, then you look at the replay and they're clearly out. So the manager's going to have to tell certain batters who might be emotional, you know what? You don't get a chance that you're not checking it out. There's certain batters that he trusts, but you only have 2 of them, so you don't want to mess with it. You might want to save it till later. So there is an element of strategy to it as well.
You know, when we get to the spring training games starting on Friday with you two, you know, you start to look at some of the veterans getting a few at-bats off the top of the game. Some of the players, maybe the midsection, Jack, who could have an impact at some point in the season. And then you're going to see at some point some of the key pitchers. And among those key pitchers for the Yankees this year, back end would be Weaver and Williams.
I'm not sure we've talked about this enough. What that combination is going to do for Matt Blake, the pitching coach, and Aaron Boone, to have Weaver and Williams at the end of games. Michael has used this comparison before about Mariano Rivera and John Wetland on the '96 Yankees. When you have 2 pitchers who you can rely on to get 9 outs in a big game, Michael, that's a security blanket. It turns into a Little League game. Get a lead after 6 innings, game over.
And what this bullpen is, and Brian Cashman told us this the other day when we interviewed him, Bob, this is a swing and miss bullpen, and it's only going to get better because Loizaga is going to join them sometime in May, and then you've got Cousins when he gets healthy. That's a potentially great bullpen. They added Cruz, who's a big swing and miss guy.
Great pitch mix. You can tell, kind, humble, competitive. Seems like the kind of guy you would love to catch.
Yeah, I listened yesterday. You guys did a great job down there, but it seemed like Max Fried's personality is very even keel and very steady. And by that, I mean, it doesn't look like he gets amped up when he's going to take the baseball every 5th day. The one thing we know from his time in Atlanta, that's exactly what he does. He takes the ball every 5th day.
The pitcher that I thought of from the left side was Jimmy Key. That's who he reminded me of, because Jimmy Key could be out there and you wouldn't be able to tell if he was up 8-0 or down 4-3 because he had a singular focus. I spoke to Omar Minaya, one of the Yankee execs, about Fried. He was actually working for the San Diego Padres when they drafted Fried out of high school, and he said everything that he saw in Fried coming out of high school, you still see, just in an advanced way. The delivery is still very smooth. The pitch mix is expansive, and he's a strike thrower. He gets ground balls. He keeps the ball in the ballpark, and though you might not see it because he's not a guy who's going to beat his chest, Omar said the competitive juices. He said this guy is out there. He's a lion. He wants to win.
Flash, give me the hitter's perspective. You're in the box against him, and he essentially has that old-school curveball, 12-6. He can throw a slider. He can throw a cutter, that sort of thing. How tough is that to hit? Because you don't see it that much anymore.
Yeah, it's the curveball that's going to get your attention with the swings and misses. But I mentioned this on our last show. He throws his fastball in on righties as good as any left-handed pitcher that I have seen. And what that does, it opens up the whole plate for him. If you're a right-handed hitter, you can't dive out there looking for that curveball or that changeup or that two-seamer. You have to respect the pitch in. So I think that's what gets a lot of the swings and misses on the curveball, is the ability to dominate the inside part of the plate. And Jack, you mentioned he gets a lot of soft contact. It's going to have to be a premium for the Yankees to put a good infield defense behind him.
Yeah, we don't know exactly who's going to be where. And that infield, we know Volpe and Chisholm are going to have spots, but the Yankees are trying to fill in the other positions around them. But a real quick thought on that curveball. He throws it about 20% of the time. Last year, he got 67 inches of drop on that pitch, 5.5 feet. And that's what Bob and Flash are talking about. This is old school. Think of Sandy Koufax, or in more recent vintage, think of Clayton Kershaw. The average curveball drops 53 inches. So he's not just he is way better than anyone in terms of getting the drop on that pitch.